Hello, I'm James Daybell.
And I'm Kit Heyam, and together we're the team behind the Gendering the Museum project and the accompanying Toolkit, which we'd like to tell you about in this film.
The Gendering the Museum Toolkit was developed in collaboration with the Victoria and Albert Museum in London and the Vasa Museum in Stockholm in Sweden as a way of finding new ways of uncovering and communicating the gendered histories of everyday objects. Now, it's important here to point out that our understanding of gender is relatively flexible. It encompasses women as well as men, femininities and masculinities, as well as sexualities and identities, including LGBTQ+, and especially trans identities.
Now, at the heart of our research were a number of pressing questions that were important to museums and heritage sites in reflecting on issues of relevance and inclusion. So, how can museums tell new stories about gender? How can we diversify our gendered representation, integrating more stories of women and more stories of LGBTQ+ people? How can we look at our existing collections in new ways to uncover hidden stories of gender? How can we embed new ways of working across the museum to help more of these stories come to light? And how can we share these stories with the public?
In answering these questions, we developed an object-based toolkit that lays out a step-by-step process for what we call gendering the museum. What this means in practice is the uncovering and communicating of the gendered aspects of objects. And our intention here is to share our experiences of working with museum objects and gender in a way that works for any museum or historic site, whatever their size, whatever their budget, or whatever their level of expertise.
Now, there are a few things we really wanted to emphasize in the toolkit. Firstly, we wanted to stress that every object has gendered aspects, because every object is embedded in a set of gendered power relations and it's implicated in forms of gendered identity construction. We also wanted to emphasize that objects can be gendered at every stage of their life cycle. So we're not just talking about uncovering how objects might have been used in a gendered sense. We're also talking about who made a given object, what materials it was made from, how those materials were sourced, how elements of its design might be gendered, and also what its afterlife has been in terms of gendered interpretations. In thinking about how we could research this, we drew on a life writing technique called prosopography, which uses collective biography to flesh out the details of an individual's story. Now, with an object, we might well not be able to know exactly who made a specific object in a museum collection, or who used that specific object. But what we often can know is what kind of people tended to make this type of object, or what kind of people it was designed to be used by.
So the toolkit then provides a practical guide to the process of researching and presenting objects with an eye to gender. But it's also much broader than that. It's an approach that can be applied across the entirety of an institution, including training of staff, exhibitions and curation, cataloguing and collection, and also education and public engagement. If you work in or with a museum, whether as a curator, as an exhibition designer, a tour guide, or an event planner, we hope you'll find something in here to spark your interest and to shine a new light on your collections.
And we hope too that the tools we share here are applicable to diversifying museum representation in other ways. Because gender, of course, does not exist in a vacuum, and we think that the techniques we've developed could be used alongside other work being done to change the representation of other marginalised groups in museums. The racist and colonialist ideologies that have shaped many museum collections, for example, also had and still have gendered dimensions, and so gender in collections can, we think, help us to take an intersectional approach to addressing these issues. By thinking more widely about our objects in multiple ways, we can move towards creating museum spaces that are genuinely representative of everyone.
If this toolkit has inspired you, or if it's changed the way in which you think or act in any way, or if you have any other feedback for us. We would love to hear about it, and please do get in touch with us via the email on the screen.